Any education apart from Jesus Christ is for us miseducation. And it produces not education nor an educated man, but a new race of barbarians who are today busily destroying their civilization. Humanistic education is the institutionalized love of death. Christian education, because it serves him who says, I am the way, the truth, and the light, is the love of life.
This is the Love of Life podcast, conversations with Jesse and Courtney.
Thanks for joining us. Here's another episode of the Love of Life podcast. It's our first episode back to start the new year, is to start 2022, and we're super excited to be here. We have a special guest with us tonight. We have Marcus Pittman. He's the CEO of Lore TV. He's got a pretty lofty goal that he's trying to accomplish. He wants to cancel Hollywood. And I say more power to you, Marcus. Thanks for, there it is.
Yeah.
Nice. Very good. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about Lore TV. If someone's never heard of this, I've scoured the website. I know, I know a bit about it myself. But for those that are saying, what is this thing? Go ahead and just give us a little rundown.
Yeah. So what we're doing is we're building a streaming platform for filmmakers to be able to make the movies and TV shows that they want to make. The way we'll go about doing that is we'll allow the monthly subscribers to be able to spend a portion of their monthly subscription funding the films and TV shows that are presented to them. I always say, like stuff like Stranger Things, the Netflix subscribers are the ones who made that, right? Like they're the ones that contributed their monthly subscription to get Stranger Things made. The only difference is they didn't have a choice as to whether or not it should be made. So they made Cuties too, right? Right. So what we're doing is we're giving that power of funding the films and TV shows that will be streamed on the platform to the subscriber directly without having Hollywood executives as middlemen in the way.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So how did you get this started? What was the idea? Did this happen in your garage, or what was the lots of things seem to happen and start in garages.
A lot of big things can happen in garages.
Yeah. Well, I made a movie called Babies Are Murdered Here. And then that got Jeff Durbin with Apologia Studios attention, and I went and moved out to Apologia, and we built Apologia Studios up. And then I did some social media marketing for a company that did some PureFlix ads for a while, and then left. And then I said I just want to make one movie for a whole year. So pay me 1 year salary. As I told you, I was like, pay me 1 year salary and let me just make one film. And so we made Babies Are Still Murdered Here. And then that did really well. And then we put it on Amazon Prime. We had a giant billboard up on the interstate telling people to go watch it and everything. And then the next thing you know, Amazon just deleted it from their platform.
Of course.
And, and so I thought it was because it was pro-abortion, pro-life. But I mean, it might have been, but I found out, later, just to be fair, they cut at that time, they cut like every independent documentary from their platform all at once because they realized they had a lot of garbage on their website.
Sure.
So if it didn't come from an approved source, I think they cut everything, but I didn't know that at the time. And I was like, wow, Christians, we got to solve this problem if we can't make movies like this. And so, the problem is funding and distribution. Those are the two problems artists have. And Netflix is pure distribution. For Netflix only focuses on distribution. They do all the funding, and then Kickstarter is specifically funding, but they don't have distribution, right? So we thought about sort of blending Netflix and Kickstarter together, what that would look like and how it would solve all the artists' problems. And that's what happened. And I think the best part of it is that artists are going to be able to be free to make movies and TV shows that don't fit into a secular category and don't fit into the Christian bubble market that PureFlix has sort of established as this is what a Christian movie looks like. And so we'll let the market decide if the artist's film is any good, right? And so it's good. It's good for the filmmaker because they don't have to put up a huge investment in a movie and then find out nobody wants it.
Right.
And then it's good for the subscriber because they have power and they get to make those decisions and they don't feel left out, wondering what the gods have chosen for them to watch tonight.
Yes, that's right. So where are we in the process of Lore TV kicking off? I see there's a lot of projects.
We're really close.
Okay.
We're really close. We're actually doing user experience walkthroughs now. So we're doing walking people through essentially what sign up will look like, what the website will look like. And then from there, that's being coded based off of the user inputs and walkthroughs and stuff like that. It's very high level development that we're doing. It's not like we didn't hire some company in India to just put out a stock website. It's all American developers who work. I mean, a lot of these guys are working secretly for us while they work for Google and Apple and all these other companies and stuff. We're pretty lucky to have them. And we're providing, our goal is to provide work for our employees and the filmmakers, right? The freedom we give the filmmakers, we want to give employees and developers so that they don't feel like they have to just put their head down and be quiet or get fired for calling someone gender 3 as opposed to gender 4, right? So
a terrible offense.
Yeah, terrible. People are getting fired at Disney for it.
Yeah,
we've heard about it from some people. So it's really bad. It's really bad, and but I think the timing's good now. So
no.
Awesome. Do you have a date in mind that it's going to launch, or is that kind of?
I would say by first quarter this year, I think we should have an initial beta launch open.
Wow, so that's really soon.
That's the plan. Yeah.
And are you looking at the current list of things that are out there right now that we can see previews to? Is all of those will launch at once, do you think, or you'll just kind of come out with
it'll be based on funding goals, based on how many subscribers. The more, this is just with anything, the more subscribers you have, the bigger budget projects you can have. So some of the projects we have sort of in the tank that we haven't announced yet are big budget projects.
Okay.
And then there's some, we'll start out with smaller independent films. And, the plan is that the subscribers who are with us early on, the early adopters, will start to see, the more people that join this platform, the more we can do. And so the goal is really to create a platform where the monthly subscribers are the ones talking about it. And that, so we can be as not as dependent on Facebook and Twitter as the rest of every major tech company is dependent on, Facebook and Google ads and stuff like that. But I'm under the belief that if a product is good enough, people will tell others about it. That's sort of the whole foundation of the Great Commission is built on that idea that Jesus is enough and he's great and you should worship him. And so, not that I want people to worship Lord, but I think we see over and over again in Scripture, very small groups of people can really grow and expand and defeat giants. So,
what kind of overall genres are you seeing that will be placed on Lore TV? I know you said it will be basically, the people itself will decide, but give us an idea of the genre of things.
We're going to present. We already have a trailer for Follow the Dead, which is a Irish zombie comedy film, and then we have a documentary series on demon possession. So those are two I would say would be in the paranormal or horror documentary genre, genre. And then then we have animation. We have some animation projects that we're going to be announcing soon. We have we have like those are areas I don't think a lot of Christian entertainment really dives into that well. Like you hardly see any really good Christian animation, not since like the Focus on the Family days when you had like McGee and Me and stuff like that, right? Like all that sort of really great. And I mean, Adventures in Odyssey, right? So you do voiceover work.
Yep.
Right? So like, you know, I always say that Focus on the Family is a great example because you have people like, you know, the guy that does Wacko from Animaniacs.
Yes, Harnell.
Right. Yeah, Harnell is the guy that's doing, you know, Adventures in Odyssey. He's been doing it for years. So you don't have this weird, you know, category that says, well, we only have to do Christian actors or we have to do non-Christian actors or whatever. You just have people that look at Adventures in Odyssey and go, man, this stuff is really good and I want to be a part of that. And then, you know, all those voice actors are you know, doing that. And they used to, I mean, Adventures in Odyssey, I mean, I grew up listening to that.
We still listen to that with our kids, man. Come on. It's
I remember I downloaded like all the episodes I found one time way back when, you know, Napster was the thing. I was like, that's crazy. And I just binged. I would binge it like I would podcasts back before there were podcasts. So and so that's the sort of stuff that I look to and I go, wow, man, they were selling that in like Chick-fil-A Happy Meals. You know, like if there can be a Christian culture, and VeggieTales is the same way, right? So there is this ability for Christian productions to be mainstream and popular, right, and not necessarily compromising, which they usually normally do later. But I think Focus on the Family is still. They've still been able to maintain that.
So you're here to guarantee that Kirk Cameron is not going to be in every film that Lord TV produces?
Not in every one, and neither is David Arrow White. So
I'm in. Nothing against those guys or anything.
Yeah, but we'd have Kirk anytime. He could be in whatever he wants.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you have any parameters or safeguards in place for content to not be, like, as your teaser trailer kind of put it out, like for grandma?
Yeah, I mean, we're not, we have Christian standards, like morality standards. And so for the most part, with the projects that we've either seen, or are going to get made, they have that understanding that they can make whatever they want, but it just has to be Christian. And I think a lot of that is, you know, sort of like Augustine that said, you know, love God and do what you want, like that sort of phrase. And so that's really what we want to impose on the artists. We don't have strong content standards. It's better to do that on a case-by-case basis than it is to do it on a just like set a blanket law. I'd rather give the artist the freedom and then for us to come to the artist later and say, yeah, that's rough for us. It's a lot better to have that conversation than it is to do anything else. And for the most part, we haven't really had to do that at all. There was one issue where it was an abortion documentary and we had to say no to just one part where it was they just showed an actual abortion, so there was nudity, and like, you know, so like even that, you know, made us go, well, we need to think about this because it wasn't as clear cut as, you know, full frontal sex scene or something like that. But we said no to it because we just said, well, let's just keep that hard line. And so there, you know, so there's a lot of questions, and you know, I think I would just rather like, let's go with the freedom route. And then make those decisions as we go. But for the most part, everybody we've spoken to, we've told them that we love their idea and just make it however they want. We don't want to be given notes like Hollywood from the studio that says, you know, oh, you need more Black people in your cast, or you're not going to reach this market if, you know, PureFlix's diversity requirements, if you call it that, is a horse, a little girl, a parent, you know, right? Like, so, right. So those are like the standards they look for in a movie to see if it'll sell well to their audience. And we don't want to be like, you need a horse in this movie if we're going to sell.
Right.
You
But
know,
it's
'cause
not
that's-
going to be, it's not going to be porn with a story on Lure.
right. Yeah. Yeah. So we don't want to, you know, sort of lean into that. We'd rather just say, look, make what you want, and then we'll go from there. So that's sort of what we're going to do. Yeah.
Sure.
Awesome.
But I would say, just to be clear, I would say that we're not going after content for children.
Sure.
So I know like we don't call ourselves family friendly because we think there's stories that we like to figure out, like what do Christians watch when the kids go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
Like what are the, because we know that like parents watch things that they don't with their kids.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean that the things they watch is like inherently wicked. Like you probably wouldn't watch like Dateline with your children.
Sure.
Fox News with your children, right? So there's
exactly.
there you know, and when you go into a Christian bookstore, you have, you know, 35-year-old and above single men section, and then you have like your married couple section, and then your single women section, right?
Sure.
So the Christian bookstores understand that sort of category, that one book isn't necessarily for all ages. But when it comes to the Christian film industry, for some reason they think, well, all movies need to be made for all ages, and that just doesn't make sense.
Sure.
So what we're doing is we're looking for contents from like mainly older teenagers to adults.
Yeah.
So sort of like the young adults. So sort of like the MTV sort of age group that MTV launched in the 80s, I think would probably be where we're headed for, you know, just the 35 and below male audience. So
yeah. Now we're talking about an industry, Hollywood, that's been around for over 100 years. Why has it taken Christians, do you think, let's just go in the weeds a little bit here. Why has it taken Christians this long to say, hey, you know, we need to create these stories too. We need to come up with content ourselves. We need to, you know, come up with things that we can put out there that aren't even necessarily just for Christians, but are wholesome entertainment, good content.
I think there's a lot there. I mean, originally Hollywood had like the Jew, the priest, and the Catholic, right? And then they would review each film. I think if you know, like for example, they had to get approval for Lucy and Desi to say the word pregnant or right on TV, right, from the Christian or the religious groups that they worked with. So there was a lot of standards for that. They had those restrictions. And then I think just eventually the culture became less and less Christian, and so does the arts. And so you see that, but then you have something really interesting with like the Passion of the Christ, Mel Gibson's film, and Mel Gibson's film made $600 million worldwide. Like that's not a lot now, right? But back then, when that movie came out, $600 million global box office was a huge hit, right? That was right up there with like Titanic and like those sort of movies. They were one of some of the top grossing films of the decade, right? And then you would think any businessman worth their salt would have said, well, shoot, we need to do more of that. There's a whole market out there that's hungry for this stuff. But that's not what they did. Instead, they blacklisted every actor that was a part of it, all the cast and crew, all that stuff. And so I think from there, you started to see this actual, not just we don't make these stories because we don't think they'll do well, but just an actual suppression of these stories. And then, you know, they would give you the occasional God's Not Dead or whatever. And then Pureflix comes along, and then they sort of decided, you know, it's best just to make these films for this audience and this genre. And then that way we can sort of appease the Christian, but then we can push all of our gay LGBT sort of rights and all that other sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, and that worked well for a while. And then now you have, what's concerning is that Sony recently last year bought Pureflix, right? And Sony's the same one who's, you know, pushing LGBT agenda and This Is Us, right? Like, so, right. So are all the films that Sony does now have to get positively ranked on the GLAAD score, right? So there's just this massive shift that's happening. And I think eventually we're probably not even going to have Christian films at all anymore, not even the cheesy ones. So it won't be long before there's a Pureflix movie with, like a female pastor,
Played by
boldly,
Beth Moore.
yeah, right. A female pastor boldly defending LGBT ideas and stuff, right? Like that'll be a PureFlix movie. Mark my words.
Oh, yeah.
It'll happen.
We're going to timestamp this podcast right here. Marcus Pittman said it. He called it.
Prophecy. Yeah,
That's
I'm
right.
sure it'll happen.
That's right. So you have, like I said at the beginning, a very lofty goal here of trying to cancel Hollywood. Is it doable? Is it something that you think we can see at least the tide even begin to turn sometime in our lifetime?
I think so. If you would have said like 10 years ago that, the taxi cab industry is going to be decentralized and nobody's going to ride yellow taxi cabs anymore, that would be really weird to understand.
Yeah.
Right. Like that would be that. Yeah, that'd be nuts. So the great thing about technology is that it decentralizes structures, right? So or systems that are usually gate kept. And so Hollywood is gate kept, right? There's a lot of money riding on the fact that Hollywood still remains in control and the influencer of culture, because it's a religious thing. It's not just a money thing. But right. And so if you come up with a way, like let's say the taxi, well, right now, so Hollywood is highly regulated. There's unions, rules, like all these sort of things that everybody's just going along with it because they have the money. And then here comes something like us who says, well, we don't care if your cast or crew is unioned or not. We'll give it just as big of a platform. Well, you can't do that on Netflix. You can't put an ununion movie on Netflix, right? A non-union movie on Netflix. And so there's this heavily regulated industry, but throughout history, we've seen that the more regulated the industry becomes, the faster it gets decentralized. All right. So, I mean, and I can give you a lot of examples of this. Helicopter pilots for films are now replaced by drone operators. Right. Like most movies do not use a helicopter anymore. For their productions, it's just a drone operator that they pay super cheap compared to the cost of renting a helicopter for a day. And right. And then, so drones decentralized the flight industry. Right. And then, Uber decentralized the taxi cab industry. And remember, these industries regulated themselves. The taxi cab industry regulated themselves so that they wouldn't have any competition. That's why they would petition to make it so that, a taxi cab license cost $1 million, right? Like they did that because they wanted to keep it within their circle and all the money in their circle. And then when Uber came and Lyft came, it just completely disrupted that. And then this is exactly what happened with the printing press, right? With Gutenberg, the Bible was encompassed in chains, and they would only let certain people read it. And it wasn't until the printing press came that reading was decentralized. The internet's come along and decentralized news and information. So I think you see this history starting with, the Tower of Babel. There was this sort of desire for everyone to come together and do this one thing. And God said, no, you have to disperse, right? And then he went and made it so that their languages would make it impossible for them to work together. And then all of a sudden, in Acts, we see that the languages come back to the people, and the Tower of Babel's curse is sort of lifted from that point on. And now everybody can work together, but still spread out at the same time. So there's this decentralization that's happened with permission from God at that point in Acts 2. So I think you see that sort of. So whether or not lore is going to be the thing that does that, that decentralizes, the ability to be able to do that, I don't know, but I think it's worth the risk, both financially and with time, if you see, like I see the groundwork that in which that can be done. So it's worth pursuing.
Mm-hmm.
When you say it's a religious thing, you want to unpack that for us a little?
Like Hollywood's a religious thing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So a good example of that was like Dave Chappelle, right? Dave Chappelle makes millions of dollars on anything he touches. He's one of the best comedians in the entire world. And then when he came out and did that special with Netflix and it became this anti-trans thing, GLAAD released a statement to the press that said that these ideas are harmful because we know the importance of Hollywood in changing people's opinions on LGBT issues. Right. So they're essentially saying the reason why Dave Chappelle cannot be given a platform is not because of how much money he makes or doesn't make. It's because the role of Hollywood has a core function to change the mindsets of the audience. So that's why you don't get Christian films. That's why you don't get movies where, you know, a man, just throwing something out here, this is where you don't get a movie where a man leaves his wife to become gay and it becomes this bitter evil person, right? Like it's always, you know, the hallmark ending for those people, right? They're always seen as a good guy, right? You never see sexual sin destroy a family in the LGBT sense of sexual sin, and so there's always just this sort of narrative that they're pushing, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter about money. Like if it was about money, Cuties should have been pulled like as soon as like it got heat, but they dug in and they fought for it. You know, and so it's not about money. It's about pushing an agenda and a cultural agenda, which is fine. Like I'm okay with that, but I think Christians need to have the same amount of freedom and opportunities to push that cultural agenda as well, because there's not neutrality. So everybody's going to be pushing some sort of worldview. So right. Yeah, we just want to make the grounds fair.
Yeah, nothing is neutral.
Yeah, right.
How are you sourcing ideas? You say you already have ideas in the queue. Like, is there a way that you're attracting artists?
We have a creator sign up. And so really they're coming to us. We've been going to conferences and talking at conferences and like Christian film festivals and stuff like that. And mainly we just talk to Christian artists and we just say, usually what we say to an artist is, what is the film that PureFlix rejected that you really want to make? that really, we get some really great ideas. You'd be surprised at the sort of content that just is just waiting for someone to, take a risk and make it. And so a lot of our stuff is like that. I mean, we've talked to artists who work very high level jobs in Hollywood that you would know their work. They've won Emmys, they've won awards, and they have golden handcuffs on, right? Like, so it's like I can just do what they want and then I'll get paid tons of money and I'll be able to support my family. But it's not really freeing to them. It doesn't really give them fulfillment in the sense of they're really using their gifts and skills to glorify God and stuff like that. And so I think once we can prove that lore can make the artist a lot of money, and they can do what they want, I think Hollywood's going to have a problem keeping artists that don't get the same amount of freedom. So this is what HBO did to succeed, is that they told the artists, yeah, you just make whatever you want. Yeah. And they went the crazy way with it, with like nudity and all this other stuff, but it was what allowed them to get the best talent when they had like no budget. So that's sort of what we're doing too. Yeah. And Netflix is not going to give an artist freedom at all. It's not going to happen. And they don't even know what that is. So. Yeah.
Are you seeing anyone else on your side of this industry? Are you seeing anyone else even trying to do what you're doing? Or do you think at the moment Lore TV is the only one trying to work within this model and within this sort of Christian framework?
I think you're going to see a lot of crowdfunding movies. Like obviously VidAngel is crowdfunded movies and TV shows. Like that's sort of what they're doing. They're doing it more from an actual investment standpoint. And there's probably some other smaller studios that are sort of doing a sort of funding model sort of thing. But I think the way our website's going to work is going to be what's really different and unique. It's not going to work in the same way that most people would expect it to. And I think that's really where the value of it's going to come in, and especially for the artist. And so, like, everything we're doing is really about how do we make it better for artists? How can they make more and be free to tell the stories that they want? So everything is sort of that focused. Whereas I don't know if I would say that in the other crowdfunding mechanisms is that freeing.
So for the consumer, is it going to be similar to that of, say, Netflix when I go on to the website, or potential? Is there an app already? Do you have an app?
Everything is going to be without an app, and and it'll be through the desktop or through the just the browser on your phone. And the reason is because we don't want to have to concede to excuse me. We don't want to concede to Android's app store rules. Like, it doesn't make any sense to have 90% of your audience dependent on permission from Google to do anything. And we know that Apple and Google would absolutely reject our platform based on some of the movies and TV shows that we're working on.
Right.
So we don't want to be dependent. So it's better, since we're going after the young audience anyway. Everything will be done in browser.
Okay. So in that sense, it will be done. So will there be a login feature similar?
Yeah, you'll have an account. Yeah, you'll have an account. You'll be able to browse projects, and then you'll be able, once a film is funded, you'll be able to watch it and stuff. The only difference is you'll have to cast it to your TV, I think, at least early on. Eventually, that might get a lot better, but that just depends on. There's a lot of strings that come with, like, Roku deals and stuff, that I don't think a lot of people really understand. Like, the 30% cut of all funds go to Roku, and that's like money that could go to the artist. So that's just, so there's just a lot of questions and concerns with that. But if you're in demand enough, usually a lot of those restrictions and stuff are tossed out the window because people get mad at them. So our plan is just to become so big and so hot that they have to have us on all those sort of things.
Right.
So.
What does your team look like right now? I know you have developers.
Yeah, we have developers. We have Jason Farley, who's our chief content officer. He speaks with artists every day. And then we have John Speed, who is director of communications, and he works on writing blogs and sort of reaching out to high profile people about some of the projects that we're doing. And he works on connecting artists with, podcast interviews and stuff like that to help promote their stuff. And then we have about, I think, maybe 13 employees right now, I think, that are off and on part-time. And so I mean, it's a pretty good team. It's we've raised $500,000 for our seed round. And then, which is nothing, right? I always tell people, like, $500,000, man, it's incredible what we've done in terms of the content and the relationships we formed with the artists, when we've raised no money. And in comparison to, the cost of one movie is, $20 or $30 million that a Christian film company would put out. And we've only raised $500,000. And so hopefully with our next round, once we can generate proof that people are subscribing and really want to see this happen, we'll be able to go with a bigger Series A round. But a lot of that is, finding the investors who have a backbone that believe in your mission and aren't going to use their money as a way to control you in the long run. Because if we're controlled, then so will our artists. And so we don't want that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
So it's David and Goliath, man. It really is.
Well, we definitely know who won that battle. So
yeah, that's right. That's right. Same with Gideon. His army was too big.
Yeah,
so you don't
that's
want the army too big.
Well, that's a perfect segue into your Gab email that was sent out about 2 months ago, I believe, an eschatology of victory, right? I believe you wrote that for Gab News.
Yeah. Torba
posted,
Torba posted that he was looking for people to write blogs on victorious eschatology and how the Dabneys and those guys in the past, sort of with dispensationalism, like, sort of harmed us.
Yeah.
And so I was like, dude, this is all me. And so I emailed him, and he said, yeah, go ahead and do it, and I'll publish it. And so, yeah, that was essentially it. And like that's my position. Is it's weird to me that in the nation that's spawned the most amount of mission work in the history of the world, where the Christian culture has been the predominant influence, for the past 100 years, 300 years, Christianity has had some sort of hooks into what we do in America. Yet for some reason right now, there's not a single major corporation, whether it's Google or Apple or Facebook or Twitter, there's not or McDonald's, right? Like there's not a single corporation that has a very strong Christian worldview. There's Chick-fil-A and Hobby Lobby, and right, so there's that. But we've seen a shift, in Chick-fil-A recently, with hiring an Obama representative to handle charitable donations for them and stuff like that. So there's been this shift towards the SJW route that Chick-fil-A has gone. But Chick-fil-A was essentially it. Chick-fil-A and Hobby Lobby were the two major corporations that were really, taking a firm position. And now when we need it most, when we need, a Google to stand up and say, no, this is not right, they're not, right? Like this is when we need the most, and there's not there. So our hope really with Lore is to become a multi-billion-dollar global brand that will use its weight and influence to impose Christian values.
Sure.
In the same way that Hollywood and all the other organizations impose secular values.
Yeah, but Marcus, isn't Jesus isn't he imminently returning? Like, probably in the next few months or years?
Yeah. I mean, so that's sort
what's
of
going on here.
Yeah. So if you believe that Jesus is coming back like immediately at any moment, you're not going to build 400-year plans for your business, right? Like Arthur Guinness did a 9,000-year lease for the property in which Guinness beer is built on. And he got saved under Wesley and Whitefield, right? When Wesley and Whitefield came to Ireland to do a revival. And so he got saved and said, well, I'm going to need a 9,000-year lease on this property. And they still have that lease. You can see it. It's encased in like plastic in the museum in Ireland. But he also built this business that changed Ireland for generations. He hired a doctor instead of nowadays we're trusting in like secular health insurance companies to provide for our employees. And where he hired a doctor that would personally meet with all his employees, and not that they had health insurance really back then, but he did that. And then he believed that if the wives of the employees were educated, then the men would go home and get education as well. So he would have these Christian pastors and theologians come and do seminars just for the women. That way that they would come home and be able to talk to their husbands and educate their husbands. And so like, it was just, I mean, you see this, and this went on for 2 or 3 generations. Wow. Starting with, 1800s, all the way up until now. It's just a corporate machine in Ireland, and everyone in Ireland is kind of disgusted about what it's become compared to the stories, their grandparents tell them about it. So we see that there has been Christian brands in the past, and even Christian technology. Samuel Morse, his story is really great. Like, he was doing a painting, and he got a letter in the mail that his wife had died, and it said, don't bother returning because she'll already be buried by the time she was sick, but don't bother returning because she'll be dead and buried by the time you get back. And so he was so discouraged by the idea that it took several days for him to receive a letter in the mail. And then he heard that Benjamin Franklin or Edison, one of them, of course it was Edison, or did some sort of experiments with electricity, and the lightning would arrive at the end of the cable, no matter how long the cable was. And so he asked his friends at a bar one night, he's like, do you think you can communicate with it? And they were like, no, that's crazy. But it kind of kept him up at night, the idea that you could communicate through electricity. And he invented the telegraph, right? Like, so that's, and the first words on the telegraph presented to Congress was, what hath God wrought, right? Like those were, and you still see that telegraph is still in the Supreme Court building today where they did the experiment. And so, even when the president spoke to the Queen on the first transatlantic cable, it was stated that may this line be used continually to glorify God and bring peace among the nations. So that was like the first transatlantic cable message, right? And so we've always sort of had that. We've always been in charge of technology. It's only new that Christians haven't been the ones doing this. This is new in church history that Christians aren't on the forefront of this stuff.
And would you say that it's because Christians have essentially given it up?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with eschatology. The rapture's coming at any time. So there's, let's just go and work, just get something that'll pay the bills, keep food on the table for the family, and not try to take insane risk. Let's not, worry. I mean, I think one of the things that you lose with a dispensational eschatology is a desire to leave a godly inheritance for generations, right? Like in our society, we call that, they got a nasty word like white privilege. It's not white privilege. It's biblical inheritance, right? Like the father is passing on something. It's not nepotism, right? Like this is what the Bible says inheritance is. And you see that with like Will Smith and his kids. Will Smith talks about how he's doing this for his children, the Ball family. Jay-Z and Beyonce, their kid Blue Ivy won a Grammy at age 6. Like that wasn't that like Jay-Z and Beyonce didn't have the opportunity to win a Grammy at age 6, but Blue Ivy has a privilege, right? Like, so there is this biblical inheritance, and I think we've lost that, and so much that we think it's actually a bad thing, right? We were talking, these rich white people who had wealthy parents, and they never had to work in their life before. It's like, well, I mean, that's part of the blessing of an inheritance, is that you don't have to work as hard to succeed and prosper. Like the amount of work we're putting in to free artists now, artists hopefully will not have to do that. So the hustle that an artist has to do to succeed is insane right now. And so freeing that up, so 2 or 3 generations from now, an artist can have just as good of an opportunity to succeed at what they do if they're good at it, as a doctor or a lawyer.
Yeah.
So
did you get any interesting feedback from that blog post or from that email when it went out? I mean, it's a hot button topic among Christians.
I didn't get any negative stuff. I think I got like a lot of really good emails from people that I haven't heard from in a while that just happened to read it and send me a message. I like Gab has its weird comment section just like YouTube does.
Of course.
So I didn't really pay any attention to much of that. But I think it was good. I think we got the attention of a few investors from it too, which was probably the best part of it, because we're sort of on an island trying to figure out where these Christian investors are.
Yeah, I think I smiled throughout the entire time. I got it as an email, not the blog version, and I was literally like, yes, 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 yes. I came upstairs and I read it to her, and I said, "You've got to hear this." So I read her.
That is incredible. Like it's amazing, really, what Gab has done. They pretty much only have two rules. It's no pornography and nothing illegal, right? Like those are just essentially the 2 rules that they have. And then because of that, I know there's this guy, his name is on YouTube, his channel is like The Quartering, right? And so his name is Jeremy, and he's always like, he comes across probably maybe libertarian conservative, but he always defends pornography. If there's some sort of thing, like he'll always defend that. He was like really mad that there was no porn on Gab or whatever. And then with what happened with Gitter, that just came out, and then you realize, man, they're not letting certain people join their platform, and they were just conning people into being a free speech platform. Even he tweeted, he's like Gab is inevitable, right? So I think like there's something that's attractive to these, Christian worldview. Like Gab is crushing it right now. Andrew Torba's a solid Christian, sharing Doug Wilson and AD Robles and like all the cross politic, and he's sharing all this stuff. It's really incredible.
Yeah.
And that's, just, that motivates me for what we're doing with lore. It's like, if Andrew Torba can do it and be successful, then we can do it.
Yes.
So
well, no doubt there's a wide audience for this, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned the Passion of the Christ earlier. Think about how much money they made, how many people watched this. There are so many Christians worldwide who will find, especially if it's good, well-made content, they will be into this.
Right. Yeah. So I don't think I think it's going to be really great. I think it's going to really change a lot. And in terms of the Hollywood industry, in terms of how people think about making films, I think the most dangerous aspect is the existence of lore shows that you don't need Hollywood. Like that's a dangerous mentality, even to get into the idea of like secular artists and stuff like that. So
yeah, well, hopefully we see the day that happens.
Yeah, man,
absolutely wonderful.
I think so. I think you'll see it soon.
Yeah.
How did you choose the name lore?
Yeah, like folklore.
Yeah.
That's where it comes from. Like the term.
There you go. Like folklore.
Awesome.
Yeah, like folklore. And then, I wanted something that was marketable and not, a Jesus flicks, right? Like I didn't like that. Just I wanted to make a global brand.
Sure.
And so, lore sort of came in my head. LORE is taken, of course.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. Okay.
Yeah, and so I just did LOOR because it still looked the same, and the domain was available. Yeah. I was under the impression we were probably going to change it before launch anyway. I always heard that, you always change your name at launch, before launch or whatever. So I was just like, well, I'll just go with this, and then it just sort of stuck. And then, I found out like LOOR is like the Spanish word for praise, and it's where you get the word laurels from. And so it was talking about giving an award, and since lore is really based on the subscribers awarding the artists, we just decided it just worked. So we, when you give lore to the filmmakers, like that's what you're giving them awards. And in the film festival world, the laurels, the Ivy laurels, are what they use for like Sundance Film Festival or something like that.
Right.
So that's where that word comes from.
Nice.
Great. That worked in your favor. Like
it did, yeah.
Or if the connections came in after you chose it, then
yeah.
Love it.
Sure.
Very cool.
That's great. How long have you been growing the epic beard you have?
I don't remember, man. I mean, it would have to be this right here is probably at least I think sometime maybe 6 months after I got married. I shaved. I didn't shave it all off, but I trimmed it, and then my wife cried, and then I never did it again.
Okay, so we're talking years. We're talking.
It's at least like 3 years right now.
Wow.
Nice.
So, but I know people, their beard grows a lot longer than that. So I think mine kind of is just sort of this is just how long it gets.
I was gonna say, were you in Durban like in some kind of competition? Because yours is obviously longer.
Yeah, no, he trims his.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah.
You don't do anything. You just
not really. No, I just try to do up here every now and then and whatnot. But I try to keep it, natural.
Yeah. It looks natural. That's great. Any closing question from you?
So you're in Moscow, Idaho. So I just have to ask, are you interconnected to the crowd? We see all this content coming out of Moscow, Idaho.
Isn't there only one church in Moscow, Idaho?
No, there's a lot. No, so I go to Christ Church. So that's with Doug Wilson's a pastor.
Yep.
That was my question.
Yeah. So they started, there's Christ Church, and then there's Christ Church downtown. And then there's Trinity Reformed. So those are 3 CREC churches in the small city. And so, we got here and we're going to Christ Church. And then we thought, maybe we should go check out Christ Church downtown. So we went there for several months to Christ Church downtown, and then realized that everybody we know still goes to the other one. So we went back, and now I think we're planted in the regular Christ Church. But no, it's a great community here.
Mhm.
There's a lot of a huge entrepreneurial mindset that you don't really see in church communities much. So that's been helpful, and part of the reason I wanted to move here is just sort of be able to have people to get advice on that have built $1 million companies, and just be able to lean on them for advice and wisdom, and within a Christian context that's not afraid. So that was sort of why we moved here, and it's been beneficial for a lot of reasons. So it's been really great.
That's wonderful. And now, are the headlines true? I mean, is Moscow, Idaho slowly, steadily becoming, do you think, a truly Christian community?
It's weird. It's the weirdest place I've ever been. There's a huge disdain for people that go to Christ Church in the community, from the liberal college people. And so they're very vocal. I actually think, I think it might be this weekend. I don't know. I think it is this weekend. They're doing like a protest against Christ Church in downtown. So like, I've never seen that before. And so it's really interesting. But I think it is becoming a Christian town. I think people are moving here because they know that the church isn't going to cave. It's not going to back down. And, there's a lot of entrepreneurs and business people, and they're buying buildings and starting businesses. And, the socialist commie Marxists are trying to figure out why they're losing all the property downtown, and why there's no strip clubs anymore. And like, well, you guys don't believe in capitalism and property ownership, So there's, this, you can see this real clear defining line that's sort of happening in the town. But the regular evangelicals aren't too concerned about Christ Church. That doesn't, they go to the businesses, they do all of the other stuff. I think it's probably just mainly the hard line from the University of Washington and University of Idaho that's 5 minutes down the road that are really upset about everything. But college professors aren't necessarily good business people, so they can't really invest in land and property. So
no. And in the end, we know the meek will inherit the earth. So
that's right. Yeah. So, well, we're definitely inheriting Moscow right now. So
start there. That's good.
It's taken 40 years, but it is happening. It's fun to see.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, that is wonderful. Okay, well, Marcus, it has been a sincere pleasure having you on. Any closing word at all you'd like to say? We'll obviously provide some links below for
go to lore.tv and check us out. Like us on Facebook, and make sure you hit like prioritize posts, because it's a little bit of suppression, but you can see all our trailers and stuff on Facebook and YouTube. So just do that, and just sign up for our email list at lore.tv, and then that way you can get updated. And then, of course, if you're a filmmaker or an artist, go to lore.tv and go to the creator submission tab, and then you can submit sort of the work and movies that you've made or been a part of, and or compiling a big database of Christian artists.
Wonderful.
And then also, of course, if you're an investor, you can fill out a tab there too if you're interested in investing in it and what we're doing. So
that's great. All right, Marcus. Well, thank you so much for coming on the Love of Life podcast.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Love of Life podcast, Conversations with Jesse and Courtney.
It is our duty through our schools to create a new one, a God-centered one. We are told in Proverbs 8, verses 35 and 36, "For whoso findeth me findeth life, and shall obtain favor of the Lord. But he that sinneth against me wrongeth his own soul. All they that hate me love death.